My son told the police you attacked him with a knife. Those words fell from Detective Morrison's mouth like stones into still water. I sat in the gray interrogation room, my lawyer beside me, my mind spinning backward to that Tuesday evening. The fluorescent lights hummed above me. My hands lay flat on the cold metal table. I wasn't trembling. I wasn't crying. I was trying to understand how my life had collapsed in 6 hours. I was cutting vegetables, I said quietly. Preparing dinner. The detective leaned back in his chair. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes. He'd already made up his mind before I walked through that door. My son Maxio had called 911 at 6:47 p.m. By 7:15 p.m., 2 police cars were outside my house. By 8 p.m., I was in custody. By 9:30 p.m., I was sitting across from Detective Morrison, listening to him tell me that my own child had accused me of attempted assault with a deadly weapon. The truth was far more complicated. The truth was that I'd been planning to leave him for months. Let me go back. Let me tell you how a mother ends up in an interrogation room accused of attacking her son with a knife when all she was doing was preparing dinner. I'm Lila Ella Adams. I'm 58 years old. I've worked as a nurse for 32 years. I've delivered babies, held hands during final moments, and believed deeply in the sanctity of life. I don't hurt people. I save them. That's who I am. That's who I've always been. Maxio is my youngest. My only child, actually. My husband Davis and I had him when we were young and idealistic. We thought one child was enough. We thought we'd give him everything. We thought we understood what parenting meant. We were wrong about almost everything. Maxio grew up bright and charming. Too charming, as it turned out. He had a way of making people believe whatever he wanted them to believe. Teachers loved him. Coaches praised him. Girls pursued him. By the time he was 17, he'd already learned that his smile could open doors that his character shouldn't have opened. I noticed things. Small things at first. A neighbor's garden tool that went missing, then appeared in our shed. Money from my purse that I couldn't account for. Lies about where he'd been, who he'd been with. My husband Davis dismissed it as normal teenage behavior. Boys will be boys, he'd say. He's just testing boundaries. But I was a nurse. I understood human behavior. I recognized the patterns. Maxio went to college. He studied business. He was handsome and confident, and he graduated with a degree and immediately moved back into our house because, he said, he was saving money to start his own company. That was 7 years ago. 7 years of him living under our roof, eating our food, using our utilities, while his business never quite materialized. What did materialize was a series of girlfriends. None of them lasted long. They'd move in, stay for a few months, then leave suddenly, usually looking confused or upset. I never asked questions. I learned not to ask questions. Davis certainly never asked. He was too busy working, too busy being proud of his son's charm, too busy ignoring the reality of who his son actually was. Davis died 3 years ago. A heart attack at work. One moment he was walking to a meeting, the next moment he was on the floor of his office building, and 40 minutes later, he was gone. Just like that. 35 years of marriage, and he was gone. I grieved. I mourned. I did all the things you're supposed to do. But I also inherited the house, the savings, the insurance money. I inherited freedom. And Maxio inherited expectations. He expected to live in that house rent-free. He expected me to continue feeding him, cleaning up after him, and asking no questions about where he went or what he did. He expected me to be his mother in the way I'd always been, complicit, silent, enabling. I tried at first. Grief makes you compliant, Loss makes you want to hold on to whatever family you have left. But after 2 years, I started to see clearly again. And what I saw was a 40-year-old man living in his mother's house, contributing nothing, taking everything, and treating me with a casual contempt that made my chest ache. The final straw came 6 months before that Tuesday evening. I discovered that Maxio had taken out a credit card in my name, not my authorized card. A new card, opened without my knowledge, in my name. He'd charged $8,400 to it before I noticed the bill. When I confronted him, he laughed. He actually laughed. "Mom, you're being dramatic," he said. "I was going to pay it back. I just needed to cover some business expenses." "You don't have a business," I said. "Not yet," he replied. "But I will, and when I do, I'll pay you back everything." He never paid back a single dollar. The credit card company demanded payment. I had to hire a lawyer to remove my name from the fraud. It cost me $5,000 in legal fees to undo what my son had done. That's when I decided. That's when I knew I couldn't do this anymore. I started making plans quietly. I consulted with a financial advisor about protecting my assets. I called a real estate agent and asked about selling the house. I even had a conversation with my best friend Renora about moving to Portland, where she'd relocated 5 years earlier. I was going to start over. I was going to reclaim my life. I didn't tell Maxio. I knew he'd try to stop me. I knew he'd manipulate me, guilt me, charm me into staying. So I kept it secret. I planned in silence. I gathered documents and made phone calls when he was out of the house. But secrets have a way of becoming visible. 3 weeks before that Tuesday evening, Maxio came home early. He was in a mood. Angry, sharp, dismissive. He didn't say why. But the next morning, I noticed my bedroom door had been opened. My desk drawer was slightly ajar. My files were disturbed. He'd searched my room. He'd found my documents. He knew. He didn't confront me immediately. Instead, he changed tactics. He became sweet again. He came home with flowers. He offered to cook dinner. He told me he loved me and appreciated everything I'd done for him. He said he was thinking about moving out, getting his own place, becoming independent. He said he was proud to be my son. I didn't believe him, but I wanted to. God, how I wanted to believe him. 2 days before that Tuesday, he asked me to keep some boxes in the garage. "Business inventory," he said. I didn't ask questions. I helped him stack them. That night, I wondered what was actually in those boxes. That night, I started checking my bank accounts more carefully. That's when I discovered the second theft. Money was missing. Not a lot at first, but small amounts, consistently withdrawn from my checking account. I pulled my bank statements and traced it back. 6 months of withdrawals, $30, $40, $50 at a time. Hundreds of dollars total. I checked my debit card. It was in my wallet. I'd never reported it missing. But Maxio had somehow gotten my PIN, or my card number, or both. I called the bank. They said there was nothing they could do. The withdrawals came from my own account using my own card. I would need to file a police report if I wanted to pursue it as fraud. I would need to prove that someone else had done it. That's when I made my decision. I was going to ask him to leave. Not gently, not with warnings. I was going to tell him that he had 30 days to find somewhere else to live. I was going to reclaim my house, my money, my life. I planned to tell him that Tuesday evening, after dinner, after we'd eaten and the dishes were done. I was going to be calm and clear. I was going to be firm. I was going to do what I should have done years ago. I was going to cut him out of my life. That Tuesday morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose. I'd made the decision, and now I was ready to act on it. I went to work at the hospital. I worked a 10-hour shift in the cardiac unit. I saw people fighting for their lives. I saw families making impossible choices. I saw the fragility of human existence. By the time I got home at 6 p.m., I was exhausted but resolved. Maxio's car was in the driveway. He was home. Good. We could talk tonight. We could get this over with. I changed out of my scrubs. I put on comfortable clothes. I went into the kitchen and started preparing dinner. Nothing fancy. Chicken, vegetables, rice. Something simple, something normal. I wanted everything to feel normal until the moment I told him it was over. I pulled out my cutting board. I pulled out my knife, a good knife, an 8-inch chef's knife that I'd owned for 15 years. It was sharp and well-maintained. I used it every day. It was as much a part of my kitchen as the stove or the refrigerator. I started cutting vegetables. Bell peppers, onions, carrots. My hands moved through the familiar motions. Slice, dice, stack, repeat. My mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about the conversation I was about to have. I was thinking about what I would say. I was thinking about how he would react. Maxio emerged from his room around 6:30 p.m. He came into the kitchen. He stood in the doorway, watching me work. I could feel his presence behind me. I didn't turn around. "Hey, Mom," he said. His voice sounded strange, tight, controlled. "Hi, honey," I replied. I continued cutting vegetables. "What are you making?" he asked. "Chicken and vegetables," I said. He didn't respond. He just stood there. I could feel him watching me. I could feel the weight of his gaze on my back. The knife continued its rhythm. Slice, slice, slice. Then he spoke again. His voice was different now, harder. "I know you're planning to sell the house," he said. I stopped cutting. My hands stilled. The knife rested against the cutting board. "I found your documents," he continued. "I know you're trying to kick me out. I know you're trying to leave me with nothing." I turned to face him. He was standing in the kitchen doorway, his face flushed, his hands clenched into fists. He looked angry. He looked scared. He looked like a man who'd just realized that his comfortable life was about to end. "Maxio," I began. "Don't," he said. "Don't explain. Don't justify. I know what you're doing. You're abandoning me. Just like Dad abandoned me when he died. You're going to leave me alone." "That's not what's happening," I said quietly. "I'm asking you to become independent, to move out, to build your own life. That's not abandonment, that's parenting." "You're a liar," he said. His voice was shaking now. "You're a selfish liar. You've taken everything from me. You've ruined my life, and now you're trying to throw me out on the street." I set the knife down on the cutting board. I turned to face him fully. "Maxio, I love you, but I can't do this anymore. I can't support you indefinitely. I can't watch you steal from me and lie to me and—" "Steal?" he interrupted. "I didn't steal anything. That money was mine. You owed me that money." "I owed you nothing," I said. My voice was steady now. I was in control. "You're 40 years old. You need to take responsibility for your own life." He stared at me. His jaw clenched. His eyes went cold in a way I'd never seen before. It was like watching a door slam shut inside him, like watching someone I thought I knew transform into a stranger. "You're going to regret this," he said quietly. "You're going to regret treating me this way." Then he turned and walked back to his room. He slammed the door so hard the pictures on the hallway wall rattled. I stood in the kitchen, my hand resting on the counter. My heart was pounding. I'd done it. I'd said the words. I'd drawn the line. Now I had to follow through. I turned back to the cutting board. The vegetables were waiting. The knife was waiting. I picked it up again and continued cutting. My hands were steady. My breathing was controlled. I was going to finish preparing dinner. I was going to eat. I was going to sit down with my son and have a calm, rational conversation about his timeline for moving out. I didn't know that he was in his room, making a phone call. I didn't know that he was telling someone, I still don't know who, that his mother had attacked him. That she'd come at him with a knife. That he was scared for his life. I didn't know any of that until the police arrived. The first sign was the sound of sirens. I was standing at the stove, waiting for the chicken to cook. The sirens grew louder, closer. Then they stopped outside my house. I heard car doors slamming. I heard voices, official voices, police voices. I turned off the stove. I went to the front door. I opened it. 2 police officers stood on my porch, their hands resting near their belts. Behind them, in the driveway, 2 more officers stood beside their vehicles. They all looked at me with suspicion and caution. "Lilela Adams?" one of them asked. "Yes," I said. My stomach had begun to drop. Something was wrong. Something was terribly wrong. "We received a call reporting a domestic disturbance at this address. We need to speak with your son, Maxio Adams." "He's in his room," I said. "What's this about?" "Ma'am, we need you to step aside. We're going to need to speak with him." I stepped aside. The officers entered my house. They were professional, but there was an edge to their movements, a readiness, a preparation for violence. Maxio emerged from his room. He looked terrified. His eyes were wide. His face was pale. He looked like a man who'd just survived something terrible. "Officers," he said, his voice shaking. "Thank God you're here. She attacked me. My mother attacked me with a knife. I was just trying to talk to her about moving out, and she came at me. She had a knife. She tried to hurt me." I stared at him. My mind couldn't process what he was saying. It was like watching someone speak in a language I didn't understand. "That's not true," I said. "I was cutting vegetables. I set the knife down. I never—" "She's lying," Maxio said. He looked at the officers with desperation in his eyes. "Please, you have to believe me. She's trying to make me look crazy, but I'm telling you the truth. She attacked me." One of the officers looked at me. "Ma'am, where's the knife?" "In the kitchen," I said. "On the cutting board. I was preparing dinner." "Can you show us?" I led them to the kitchen. The knife was there, exactly where I'd left it. On the cutting board, beside the vegetables. Innocent, ordinary, damning. "Did you threaten your son with this knife?" the officer asked. "No," I said. "I was cooking. That's all I was doing. I was cooking dinner." "She's lying," Maxio called from the living room. "She threatened to throw me out. She said I was ruining her life. She said she didn't want me anymore. And when I tried to talk to her about it, she grabbed the knife and came at me. She said she was going to make me regret being born." I hadn't said any of those things. I'd never said I didn't want him. I'd never threatened him. But I could see the officers' faces changing. I could see them beginning to believe him. "We're going to need to take you in for questioning," one of the officers said to me. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." They read me my rights. They put me in the back of a police car. Through the window, I watched Maxio standing in the doorway of my house, watching me being taken away. He looked sad. He looked like a victim. He looked like he'd just won something. That's how I ended up in the interrogation room with Detective Morrison. Your son says you attacked him, the detective said. He had a file open in front of him. He was reading from statements, from Maxio's account of what had happened. He says you threatened to throw him out. He says you came at him with a knife. He says he's afraid for his safety. I was cutting vegetables, I repeated. I set the knife down. I never came at him with anything. I never threatened him with the knife. But you did threaten to throw him out? The detective asked. I hesitated. This was the trap. If I said yes, I was admitting to conflict. If I said no, I was lying. Either way, I was guilty of something. I told him he needed to move out, I finally said. I told him he was 40 years old and needed to become independent. That's not a threat. That's a reasonable conversation between a mother and an adult son. A conversation that apparently escalated to violence, the detective said. There was no violence, I said. I was cooking. He came into the kitchen. We talked. He got upset and went back to his room. That's what happened. The detective leaned back in his chair. He studied me. He was trying to determine if I was lying. I could see the calculation in his eyes. He'd probably seen hundreds of people in this room. He'd probably heard hundreds of stories. He'd probably learned to read guilt like a language. Your son is willing to press charges, he said. He's willing to testify that you attacked him with a knife. We have a knife from your kitchen. We have your son's statement. We have a witness who heard raised voices coming from your home around 6:45 p.m. A witness. I didn't know who that could be. A neighbor, probably. Someone who'd heard Maxio yelling. Someone who'd heard his performance. I want to speak with my lawyer, I said. My lawyer, Renora's brother-in-law, Pateo, arrived an hour later. He was a criminal defense attorney, and he took one look at the situation and knew we were in trouble. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because the evidence was circumstantial, and Maxio's story was simple and compelling. They're going to charge you, Pateo said quietly, in the hallway outside the interrogation room. They have the knife, they have his statement, they have a witness who heard conflict. The prosecutor will argue that you threatened him and then escalated to violence. He'll argue that your son feared for his safety. But it's not true, I said. I know, Pateo replied. But the truth is complicated. The prosecutor's story is simple, and juries like simple. I was charged with assault with a deadly weapon. I was released on bail. The trial was set for 3 months away, and I went home to a house that no longer felt like mine. Maxio was gone. He'd packed his things and left while I was in custody. He left a note on the kitchen counter. I can't stay here. You've made it clear you don't want me. I'm going to stay with a friend. Don't contact me. My lawyer will be in touch about my things. His lawyer? My own son had hired a lawyer against me. I stood in that kitchen and looked at the cutting board. The knife was still there. The vegetables were still there, now brown and oxidized from sitting out for hours. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. Everything was evidence of my guilt. I called Renora. She came over immediately. She brought wine and fury and the kind of friendship that doesn't ask questions. She just sat with me and let me fall apart. He's lying, I said. He's lying, and everyone believes him. I know, Renora said, but we're going to prove it. The next 3 months became a blur of legal preparation, evidence gathering, and emotional devastation. Pateo hired an investigator. The investigator discovered that Maxio had called 911 from his cell phone, but the call log showed he'd called from a location outside the house. He'd called from his car, which was parked in the driveway. He'd called before coming inside. He'd planned this. He'd orchestrated this entire scenario. The investigator also discovered that Maxio had been researching how to commit insurance fraud. He'd been looking at my life insurance policy. He'd been researching what would happen to his inheritance if I went to prison. He'd been planning something, though we couldn't prove exactly what. When the trial began, Pateo presented the timeline. He presented the phone records. He presented the evidence that Maxio had called 911 before entering the house, which meant he couldn't have been attacked by me in the kitchen. He presented expert testimony about knife wounds and defensive injuries. He presented the fact that I had no scratches, no bruises, no injuries of any kind. The prosecutor presented Maxio's testimony. My son sat on the witness stand and told the jury that his mother had come at him with a knife. He cried. He said he was terrified. He said he'd only called 911 because he feared for his life. He was a convincing liar. He was a beautiful liar. He was a liar who'd had 40 years to perfect his craft. But the evidence didn't support his story. The phone records didn't support it. The timeline didn't support it. The lack of any physical evidence didn't support it. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and announced the verdict. Not guilty on all counts. I was acquitted. I was free. I was also utterly destroyed. Maxio didn't come to the trial. His lawyer sent someone to represent his interests, but Maxio himself stayed away. After the verdict, I learned that he'd already moved to another state. He'd already started a new life somewhere else. He'd already moved on to his next victim, probably. His next mark. His next person to manipulate and steal from and eventually destroy. I never saw him again. The aftermath was strange. I'd won the trial, but I'd lost everything else. My relationship with my son was over. Not just strained or damaged. Over, finished, dead. There would be no reconciliation. There would be no moment where he admitted the truth. There would be no redemption or healing or closure. There was just the knowledge that I'd raised a person capable of such calculated cruelty. There was just the guilt of knowing that somewhere in his development, I'd failed. I'd missed something. I'd enabled something. I'd created a monster. I sold the house 3 months after the trial ended. I couldn't live there anymore. Every room held a memory of his presence. Every corner held a ghost of the life I'd thought we had. I packed up my belongings, and I moved to Portland, where Renora lived. I started over. I got a job at a hospital there. I made new friends. I joined a support group for people who'd been falsely accused. I learned that I wasn't alone. I learned that there were other mothers, other parents, other people who'd been destroyed by the lies of their children. We gathered in a church basement every Thursday night, and we told our stories, and we tried to heal. A year after the trial, I met someone. His name was Nixon. He was a widower, kind and gentle, and deeply empathetic. He'd lost his wife to cancer 5 years earlier. He understood grief. He understood loss. He understood the way that tragedy could reshape a person. We started slowly. We took walks. We went to dinner. We talked about our lives and our pain and our hopes for the future. He never asked me to justify my past. He never asked me to defend my son. He just accepted me as I was, a woman who'd been through something terrible and had survived it. 2 years after the trial, Nixon asked me to marry him. I said yes. We got married in a small ceremony with just Renora and her family present. No one else. No extended family. No complicated relationships. Just the people who loved me and supported me and believed in me. We bought a small house together. We built a life together. We didn't have children. We didn't want children. We had each other, and that was enough. Every year on the anniversary of the trial verdict, I think about Maxio. I wonder where he is. I wonder if he's still lying to people. I wonder if he's ever felt remorse. I wonder if he's ever told anyone the truth about what he did. But mostly, I don't think about him at all. Mostly, I think about the life I've built, the life I reclaimed, the life I fought for. I'm 64 years old now. I've been married to Nixon for 3 years. We travel, we volunteer, we spend time with Renora and her family. I've made peace with the fact that my son is not part of my life. I've made peace with the fact that I can't save him or change him or reach him. What I've learned is that sometimes the cruelest thing a parent can do is enable their child's destructive behavior. Sometimes the most loving thing is to set a boundary and maintain it, even when that boundary means losing them entirely. Maxio accused me of attacking him with a knife when I was simply cutting vegetables. He lied to the police. He lied to the court. He nearly destroyed my life to avoid the consequences of his own choices. But I survived. I was acquitted. I moved forward. And today, I live a life that is full and meaningful and free from his toxicity. That's the real victory. Not the trial verdict, though that mattered. The real victory is this. I chose myself. I chose my life. I chose my future over my past. And I would do it all again, even knowing the cost. If you're in a situation where someone you love is lying about you, where someone close to you is trying to destroy you, I want you to know that you can survive it. You can fight back. You can win. And you can build a beautiful life on the other side of that trauma. Don't give up. The truth matters. And so do you.